Good evening. Welcome to the Westtown Township Board of Supervisors Workshop for Monday, May 4th, 2026. First thing we have up on our agenda for this evening is the discussion on the township's park policy.
So it's been a couple months since we last talked about this, and when we last met, you asked that I put together an analysis of some of our neighboring townships with some of the hot issues that we were talking about. And so that's what you have before you. So before we dive into revamping our own policy, I thought that it would be beneficial to we have a new board member and get some sense of what you think the priorities are. I could tell you what I think the priorities are based on what I've observed. But obviously that is not my decision to make ultimately as to, what we might want to hone in on in terms of adding to the code or tightening in the existing code, which, to be honest, we don't cover much. So one of the things that has been discussed a couple times is the sort of the definition of a group size, or, at what number do we require any kind of permitting? We are on the low end of that number, a little bit on the low end. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Our code says 10, our signs say 15. Others that enumerate a group size are shown here, somewhere between 15 and 25. But several of our neighbors require permits for any gathering, and they just define it as an organized gathering, which in this day and age with social media and, could just be about anything. So I do think that it's important to put a number on it, to have a sense of what our parking restrictions are. And in particular with Oakbourne Park, we have some unique situations with separate facilities. We've got the pavilion, we've got the mansion, which is unique. And we've got fields. So, and when I say fields, I'm talking the Oakbourne core, the mansion core, the mansion core, not the athletic core. That's pretty cut and dried. So a general sense on numbers, issues, drones, pretty much everybody's regulating now. We are not. Alcohol. We have a sign that says no alcohol, but our code does not say no alcohol. Bikes, we prohibit. We don't have any kind of definition for motorized bicycles. We prohibit motor vehicles of any kind. So you could, in some cases, it's a matter of interpretation. And we could leave it at that, but we prohibit motor vehicles, and then we specify bicycles are not permitted. Doesn't say e-bikes or man-powered. It just says bicycles. I know we had a recent interesting issue with tree climbing over at Creevilly. So that's a new one. That is something we could certainly cover. Horses, we have some neighboring properties with horses that occasionally will bring their horse over to Oakbourne. That's not frequent. Other issues, golf, camping, overnight camping, fishing. Given that we have a pond, I think maybe having something about fishing might be good. We could cover that broadly with, kind of a no flora, no fauna kind of thing. But, you know, some sense of the appetite for regulation and what of these issues you most likely want to
Do you think it's a good idea to make any distinction between our existing parks now and Craybilly? Because they're,
I think the definition, yes, we should certainly define passive and, you know, the definition section, well, we don't even have a specific to parks, but yes, I think we should add that. I think we should have some definition of unmanned or radio controlled apparatus for drones and, you know, motorized vehicle. There's remote controlled cars, there's remote controlled boats, there's rockets.
right.
We can,
Scouts used to do the rockets. Do they still do that over?
they do. And, you know, by permit, everything could be covered by requiring permits.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't necessarily have to outright prohibit them, but require a permit for use.
The only thing, and I think that makes a lot of sense to have some regulations around drones in particular, fireworks, alcohol, that all makes sense. The thing with the 10 persons, as I read it, Pam, it looks a little bit overbroad, because if they have a pickup basketball game, because it says any gathering otherwise assembled and composed of 10 persons, you have to get written permission. So if like my kid wants to play basketball and there's 10 people, we need a permit. That doesn't make any sense to me
Right.
as it's written. So maybe if it's either expanded by number or we limit in terms of, it says through advertisement or public notice or any gathering. I mean, I think you do probably want to limit it, because if you could have 100 teenagers show up or whatever, and that's something you don't necessarily want to have, or 100 people.
Form tournament or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just showing up. So there's probably a numerical limit on it. I don't know what you guys think, but 10 seem low to me, because if kids want to go play ball in the park, they could run into an issue.
I agree. And
Yeah.
for as long as I've been here, the signage has said 15,
Mhm.
which has been, you know, obviously in conflict with the code.
Right.
So that in itself is a problem.
Mhm.
I think maybe one suggestion would be, instead of having a number, maybe just define the term organized activity. So like, in my view, if kids just show up to play basketball and it's like 10 or 12 of them from the neighborhood, they just randomly decided to play, they're not playing any sort of organized competition type of a game, they should not require a permit, and maybe not to put a number, or just saying not to exceed this amount. So if it's organized activity, define what it is, not to exceed this amount. Maybe there are other parameters that we can add to it, but it's all about how we would enforce it.
My typical enforcement when I see a large group that I didn't know about is to, you know, it's great to see you out here enjoying the park, you know, how'd you hear about it? And, you know, what's, you know, kind of take that approach, what's going on, who's in charge, that kind of thing. And then tiptoe into, we typically require a permit in advance for any number over this, and these are the reasons why. I haven't received a lot of pushback with that approach. Occasionally people will say, well, I want to see it in writing. And then you do run into an issue when you don't have it in writing. You can put a whole list of things on a sign, and then it just is one big
Right.
sign that nobody looks at.
In Ocean City, New Jersey, the sign on the beach, it says, no playing ball
Yeah, what does that mean?
on the beach. Like,
That covers it quite a bit.
it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So you don't want to put a sign up that is going to be silly.
I mean, generally, I'm a less is more kind of person. I feel like the more you try to like really tie in, limit in writing, the more caught up you can get. But I think that certainly addressing drones, honing in on a number, kind of outright specifying some of the, in my mind, no-brainers like fireworks, firearms, and alcohol.
Yep.
What about vaping?
Well, smoking is covered by a lot, not all, so that's something that, you know.
Say tobacco products, because I would argue chewing tobacco is gnarly and you don't want that in a park either.
Yeah, any
It makes a mess.
tobacco product. I wouldn't just be vaping. I would say if we're gonna do one, I think we should just cover everything.
Yeah.
A fair number do. So again, do we want to go there or not?
What do you think about e-bikes?
I would be very strongly we prohibit bikes that are, man-powered. I mean, it doesn't specify. We would prohibit bicycles. I would definitely prohibit, I would be on the side of prohibiting any electric
Right.
scooter, bike, hoverboard, you know, rollerblade, whatever comes next that they decide to put a motor on. Because you have a lot of walkers, people are exceeding the speed that should
Yeah.
be, you know, that even other townships that regulate by speed and by wattage, it becomes a mess to kind of, and
Yeah.
weight,
Right.
you know, you weigh a bike, you're gonna, you know,
I think they're dangerous.
block somebody.
Yeah.
They go like 35 miles an hour, some of these things. And
I think, our trails is just too narrow in the parks
Yeah.
to
It's
accommodate that.
people walking a dog and somebody whipping by
I
on a
mean,
bike.
unless, I don't think we have enough park real estate really, to some municipalities designate specific parks for that type of use.
Hmm.
But I don't know that we have that ability.
I mean, and don't we have a responsibility to keep people safe? So as far as e-bikes, I feel like we should just, if we're not allowing regular bikes, it's kind of like a no-brainer to get rid of the e-bikes too.
Yeah, we discussed it internally, like with the bikes, you know, you would frequently see parents teaching kids how to bike in the park, like Tyson or Oakbourne Park, even though we prohibit those. You want to encourage that type of activity, but then how you put it in regulations if you say you prohibit that type of bike? And-
That is the toughest one, when you see a parent with
Yeah.
a kid on
Toddler.
training wheels or.
But that child is not riding the bike at 35 miles an hour, right? Like they're not going
Mhm.
fast. They're learning how to ride a bike.
It
Like
could
maybe
be argued that they're not even really riding the bike because.
They're not really riding it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
What are
so
you looking for us? I mean, a list of prohibiteds or?
I'm just.
The feedback.
Yeah, just your feedback. And I mean, I think that now that you've seen what some of our neighbors are doing, I thought that might kind of help guide your thought process. Another thing that I didn't note on here, but I think that needs to be updated is maybe enforcement in terms of what types of fines. We're on the lower end at a max of $600. Most other municipalities do at least 1,000 or do up to 1,000 as a maximum. I mean, I think in any kind of legal wrangling, you're gonna be incurring way more than that anyway, but a little bit more of a deterrent to have a fine up to $1,000 that you can throw on a sign or something.
Well, how about enforcement? I mean, I'm not talking about when groups show up and you do your thing with them, but when somebody shows up, whether it's an e-bike or a dirt bike or something that you definitely don't want there, drones, who is going to enforce? Do we call the police?
Yes.
That's the.
It would be
Okay.
a WeGo call. So in the same way, if I've seen dumping or ATVs, yeah,
Right.
it's calling WeGo.
Do we ever use external cameras to monitor the property or just on the mansion?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, they only reach so far. we do have plans to add a camera on one of the light poles in the new lot, the expanded lot behind the mansion, so that can see over to the pavilion area and the playground, the portable toilet enclosure there as well. So, but yeah, to the extent that we can, and the ones that are at the athletic core, you know, as the trees mature, we're gonna have less of a view, but we can at least at this point, I can get a sense on the weekends for, you know, people leaving at dusk, and if they're not, or any boondockers, you know, staying overnight.
Yep.
Um,
Vandalism, things like that. We have cameras.
So haven't had, well, I've determined the cause of the breaking of the the display board, where it's just a couple of young kids having a catch and missed, and it hit the, you know,
Ah.
the plastic on the cabinet. The break-ins that we had, we were able to get a car, and the resolution wasn't clear enough to get a license plate, but it did help, I think, in identifying at least the car and watching out for it in other areas. But you know, we can't see a whole lot.
Yep.
It
Yep.
all depends on the lighting and the you know, the time of day. So.
Hmm.
Have we given you what you need?
Well, I think to recap, what I'm hearing is a better definition of group size, kind of well, one thing we didn't cover is metal detecting, and I think that that's another biggie. So both with Cree-Billy and, at Oakbourne, there's a lot of post-event people that kind of, I think, are looking to see what they might find after a wedding or something. And they've had people, because it's an older mansion, they think they might find something interesting, and the same kind of thing people have called about metal detecting at Cree-Billy.
What if you lose your engagement ring or your wedding ring or whatever?
Yeah, and I think West Goshen, yeah, they're the only
Lost item.
ones, they have, for lost item only. And again, we could just say no metal detecting except by permit, and then if
Yeah.
we have an issue, we cover it, or, you know, we have some,
It's true.
What was interesting to discover is that for metal detecting, there are those organized groups that go out and just do kind of archaeology type of metal detecting, and whatever they find, they give it back to whoever owns the property. So they were asking, I think a year or 2 years ago, if they can do that at Cree-Billy Preserve at some point in the future. And they did ask, you don't have any regulations in place, so does it mean that it's permitted? So it's almost like we are at this point in time where we have to have some sort of language that we can refer to and say, this is what's happening.
the county requires if you find something, they do permit it, or they do allow metal detecting by permit, but if you find something, you're supposed to turn it into the county.
And you hope that people do.
Yeah, I mean, how would you know? But, yeah, so to answer your question, Ed, having a general sense of whether you think you want to go into the direction of greater regulation, or you just want to kind of stay with the hot ones. I mean, we could put everything in: tree climbing, no; overnight camping, no; fishing, no; you know, we have a pond, swimming, you know, we do have that covered, actually. But, and then everything else kind of just by permit, try to regulate or by permits.
By permit also would make it easier for us to track the activity, to see what type of activities people are interested in.
Yeah.
And then you can revise regulations to say whatever is not working and trying to fix it. I'm sure there are other activities that we cannot think of right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that then?
No,
Wanna
I think,
talk about the, stay on parks, but parking lots?
yep. Good. Thank you very much.
So next up then.
So we used Panoni because they were okay for the other parking lot, but were we happier with them this time than with previous times?
Well, I think, yes, I think they've put together what covers what we're interested in doing, and this is a much more basic, repaving project
Okay.
for the lot adjacent to the mansion. Most importantly, we need to bring the ADA pad into compliance, because it's currently not at grade. So it's technically not compliant. Adding a concrete dumpster pad. The force caused by, the trash truck with a loaded dumpster makes concrete necessary. The weight is just too much for asphalt,
Right.
particularly in warm weather. You can see that we're adding some pavement markings along the side of the mansion to better designate a walking area around to the front of the mansion. And then the other biggie is upgrading the lighting. So to make it safer, there's a real void right now but from like the carriage house to the front of the mansion. So in the little triangle designated in green, there's 2 poles marked there that we're considering to add to improve that. And then the existing lighting on the north side of the lot would be for to get higher poles and have the light shed more to cover the entire lot. So a big chunk of the project would be upgrading the electrical and the parking lot poles.
When this project first came up, there was some discussion of expanding the traffic circle or the, whatever you want, or driving circle in front of the mansion there. Is that okay as it is?
Well, I mean, that just gets into a bigger budget and a bigger can of worms to increase
think-
that.
Yeah, I think we only budgeted $300,000 for this project. So between Pinoni and anticipated construction costs,
Right.
we would be probably up there.
your experience, is that circular lot used a lot? People just drop stuff off at the front?
Yeah, it's for drop off, unloading sometimes, although most of the unloading is on the side, but drop off for people who do require the ADA ramp, and then also if it's a larger event that does valet parking, they'll have that service there. It's been used when we've had camps and car lines, although now that we have the new lot in the back, for the camps that we're planning this summer, that will be handled out of the pavilion, and that route will be done in the back lot.
How recent is the estimate on asphalt? Because from what I understand, that's kind of every day it's going up.
Yeah, well, it's the end of April, so we haven't had that updated in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we're not like locking in a price, like this isn't,
This is an estimated cost at this point. Yeah.
okay.
I mean, we haven't even gone out to bid
So
yet.
we're budgeting for this.
When would the construction take place?
Well, the hope would be to have this on your June 15th meeting for authorization to advertise. And ideally, construction would be done in August or September. Definitely want to have it done by before West Town Day, the first weekend in October.
Yep.
All right.
It's a relatively simple project. Don't anticipate major disruption. One lane of access has to be maintained throughout the project so that Aqua can get to their water tower in the back.
Mhm.
And so that we can continue to have recreation programming and parking in that back lot. Also still have some continuing to book some small mansion events to keep some, some of that traction going. So, basically a repave with the lighting upgrade,
Urban
and the dumpster pad.
and new AGA parking because, so this is actually creates a AGA compliant pathway towards the mansion and towards the ramp area.
Yep, right. It says resurface existing parking lot with the way I read these arrows is we're not resurfacing the lot we just put in, right?
No, the lot we just put in is in the back.
It's all the way up
Yeah,
here.
the side parking lot when you first pull in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are the 33 spaces that are adjacent to the mansion. The other lot that we expanded is back by the community garden and the pavilion.
Okay. Oh, yep, gotcha.
It's really not depicted a little bit on here.
And currently there's no lights out there.
There are lights. They're
Are there?
just on short poles
Oh.
and they're.
It's hard to see those.
It's- yeah, they're
dim. Yeah, they
pretty
need to
dark.
be upgraded to LEDs and, well, actually, I think we did put in LED bulbs, but we want to add the bollards are kind of bent and old and they're short wooden posts. So we want to get them to match the ones in the back and be taller and brighter, so then they'll have more spread of the light.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Takes us to public comment on workshop items. Any public comment on workshop items? Doesn't look like anyone's online. Good.
Nope.
All right, we'll conclude the workshop and reconvene our regular meeting